Robin Zander, scene A1.
Hello and welcome back to Snafu with Robin Zander. Today I'm so excited for my guest, Pixar animator of 25 years and author of the debut graphic novel, comic book, somewhere in between those two, North for the Winter. Bobby Podesta has been a part of a lot of Pixar movies that you have doubtless seen. He has been a graphic artist since he was a child. And in this interview, we talk about storytelling, the role of art in society, how anyone can get started doing insurmountably large tasks through incremental progress, the role of creativity, and a whole lot more. I won't belabor the point. This is a conversation worth listening to if you have stories to tell. Please enjoy this wide-ranging interview about creativity, art, and storytelling with Pixar animator Bobby Podesta. Bobby Podesta, thank you for coming on to Snafu today. I'm so excited to sit down.
I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
We're recording this on launch day of your new book, your graphic novel.
Yep.
We're going to get into it in full. But I actually wanted to start with an anecdote that you shared with me when we first got to know each other, which was the story of Steve Jobs on stage.
Yep.
Can you tell that story?
Yeah. So what I'll preface this with, this is my observation as someone who just works in film for the last 30 years and thinks about storytelling and how you tell a story, and the idea that generally in storytelling, the idea of drama, it's what you're both keeping back and what you're waiting to surprise your audience with, right? And I remember years ago, watching one of the, Apple events on the main stage, and Steve, is always coming out and says, one more thing, and whatever, which is its own bit of drama, right? One more thing, which is coming, but you don't know what it is. And he's up there in his jeans and his black mock turtleneck, and I'm watching this, and he's like, has anyone ever wondered what this small pocket is for? And he's showing like the little coin pocket on like jeans, like Levi's or whatever he's wearing. And everyone's like no one knows where this is going. And then he goes, well, I think this is what it's for. Something like this. I'm paraphrasing. And he reaches in and he pulls out what at the time is like the world's smallest iPod, and people flip out, right? They flip out like, oh my gosh. And what I love about that, if you think about it like storytelling and structure, is he introduced a question. Do you ever wonder what, and he says, and he said this, the question is about this thing, what this thing is for. And he gave the audience a question about something that the audience was very familiar with. Everybody in that audience probably had a pair of jeans at some point in their life. They all had a little pocket. They know the size of that pocket. They have put their fingers into that pocket. They probably put nothing into that pocket, right? So he's now using information that the audience has on them. And then rather than like, if he pulled out a quarter, we'd be like, it's a quarter. It's a coin. That's what I expect. But then he thwarted our expectations by pulling out a piece of technology that he didn't have to say, look at this thing that's like an inch big or something. He didn't have to describe the size of it, because he had described a pocket that we all were familiar with, and then associated this thing with that pocket. We knew what that meant. And so suddenly it was not only a surprise of what he pulled out of there, but a sense of astonishment about something that held so much technology can fit in such a small space. So it is kind of the storytelling. I'm going to set something up. I'm going to propose like a situation that what the norm is. I'm going to propose a question that might have you questioning what that norm is, and then I'm going to thwart it with a turn and give you something that is surprising yet satisfying. So there's a turn in the drama, and that's the payoff. So it's kind of a simple structure if you think about it, but I just remember watching that going like, that's really good storytelling, man. That's really good storytelling. It's like, of course that's really good storytelling. Like this is what he does. People call him a salesperson. Like, he's a great salesman, he's a great storyteller. Like, if you can tell a good story, you're pulling people in. That's the key.
I have a lot of conversations these days about what AI is going to do to X demographic graphic of people, or right, my business is making commercials and sort of mini documentaries that move hearts and minds, mostly for startups in Silicon Valley. What is AI going to do for content generation, for digital content on the internet, whatever, an ad for a company? And what I keep coming back to as an entrepreneur is I really don't care that much about video. What I care about is changing human behavior and changing human emotion. Is that when we can move people, right? And the phrase I keep saying is the value of sitting at Homer's feet and listening to him recite the Iliad is never going to go away. The value of human storytelling is paramount, matters actually more in a digital world than less. Why, if you agree with that, and I think you probably do, but why is storytelling important?
Um, I mean, I don't think any reason I would say storytelling is important is like honestly not something people have been saying for generations and eons or whatever. But it's how we convey things, right? Like, um, I think of storytelling through my lens. I think of storytelling like I think of art, right? Uh, Art is a way to express your opinion and how you process the world around you in a manner that hopefully other people can experience that art and relate to it and relate through it. That's what I think about art. And I am ever so grateful that I get to be an artist. That art is what I consider my oldest friend, who I've probably treated the worst. And then, I've neglected. I haven't paid attention to. I haven't, I've starved. And then I expect it to show up when I need it and perform, but it's really, art to me is a I say it's a gift because it was a gift given, like that I can create art. I think a lot of people, more people um, than they give themselves credit for, can create art. Art is not a zero sum game. Art is ultimately subjective because art is an opinion about how you see the world, right? Art does not need to be, someone could draw beautiful water lilies that look just like water lilies, and someone can draw beautiful water lilies or paint them that are much more impressionistic or whatnot, and they both make someone feel something. So storytelling and art to me is that thing. It's like I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to show you something, I'm going to craft something, so that other people can find some relationship to the world around them through it.
My mother's an artist. My father was a businessman, ran his own entrepreneurial business for most of my lifetime. So I kind of grew up at this perfect intersection of the two. And when I think of art, I think of going to any number of museums that I was dragged to kicking and screaming as a 5-year-old around the world that now I look back on with a lot of gratitude. But it's old, it's on walls, it's something you go somewhere to see,
Mm-hmm.
not something that is around us all the time. And so when you talk about art, or I'll say the art of storytelling specifically, we don't tend to equate Elon Musk's ability, love him or hate him, to gain attention and channel attention. We don't tend to associate Donald Trump's ability to brand and package things, the one big beautiful bill, again, love it or hate it, and I am not in favor, with storytelling or with art. But I would actually argue that calling it the one big beautiful bill is great art in the form of good communication, even if it is not communication that I agree with and that I think is a lie. How do you think about the art of communication or the art of storytelling in the modern world? And why is there this dichotomy between, you know, stories that are art on walls, or the Iliad that is something of the past, and I mean even the work that you do at Pixar that is so present and that shapes generations of children of today?
Yeah. Uh, I guess I would ask you this, or anyone watching or listening to this. Um, have you ever been in the market to buy a car? And you're like, I'm looking for a mid-sized pickup truck. And suddenly you see mid-sized pickup trucks everywhere, right? You know this, right? Whatever it is, you're like, oh, you want a VW, and suddenly, oh, I see all these VWs because you're paying attention to it, right? They didn't just appear. They're always there, right? Okay. So I had this great design teacher in college, and he said, for anyone who is telling their kids, there's no future in art, if it wasn't dug up or grown, it's designed, like all around us, all around the world. And this is why what I would challenge you to do is, yes, it's easy to say there is art just in museums, and that's where you go see art and it's old or it's aged or whatever. But that's like saying there's only cars at car dealerships. Like there's cars everywhere. They're all around us. Like art is everywhere. It's all around us. It's in our clothing. It's in the design of these headphones. It's the design of these glasses. It's in our desks and our chairs. It's in the shape of our pottery and the prints and the textiles. It's in a building and the swoop of something. It's in a skyline. It's in a sidewalk print. It's printed on the dividers in the freeway. It's the shape of a lamp. It's all of these things are designed. All these things are art. All these things are working with that balance between functionality and making you feel something, right? None of these things around us are so utilitarian. Like, go get a hammer. The handle's probably a color. It was painted or something. Guess what? It may be a penny's worth of art, but it's art, man. Like, it's designed, it's thoughtful, it's thought out. It might just be because those are the colors of the brand, but it's still a brand that makes you want to feel something. So, art is all around us. But you have to think about it like you're thinking like, oh, well, now that I'm shopping for a car, man, did you notice there's a lot of cars out there? Well, yeah, there's a lot of cars out there. There's a lot of art out there. And if you think about it through that lens, and you think about it through great writing, you think about it through great design, think about it through anything. I mean, it's amazing. It's really, really amazing.
You said that you have not always treated art or treated your relationship with the practice of making art well. Um, Talk to me a little bit about yeah, what that laugh is. Talk to me a little bit about your relationship with art or with being an artist, which I
It's
know
like
stems from a young age.
I mean, it's like the people that love you the most. Sometimes you treat the worst. You're like, oh, I'm in a bad mood. Why are you taking it out on me? Because I know our relationship is wonderful, and or I'm just having a bad day. It's like that. It's like, oh, I should probably practice my drawing. I don't feel like it, versus artists starving there going like, please feed me, practice, practice, not today. Okay, I'll just sit here and wait. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow, practice. I'll practice this weekend. Yes, this weekend. This weekend we will practice. I'll be so happy to practice. I'll be there. I'll have my pencils and paints ready for you. Oh, no, not this weekend. Oh, you're doing stuff with friends. Oh, wait, I showed up late at night with friends because you had an extra beer. Now you want me to draw? Okay, let me get my stuff. It's like that little like character that, like shows up and they're like always there to like help you out. So in my head, clearly that's how I think about it.
This practice is a certain part of your personality or a certain
It
character on your
it
shoulder.
probably is, but I love it. It's like if there's a pen and a napkin, a paper napkin, I'm probably gonna doodle. If there was a paper, butcher paper, tablecloth, I'm gonna draw on it if I can. It's great. It's how and I'm surrounded by people that make art, and I love it. And you know, Robin, have you ever met anyone as an adult that you could say, hey, when you were a kid, uh, did you draw? And they'll all say yes at some point, right? Um, like no one's going to go, no, I was 4 and I said, not for me. We all grow up, and we'll draw, we'll create art. at a very young age as a way to interpret the world, and trust me, there are literally millions of people better at making art than I am, in terms of like rendering something perfectly as it looks or whatever. But for whatever reason, I had a wonderful family and a wonderful mom, and who encouraged me and celebrated the doodles I was doing, and somewhere along that way of childhood, being the artist became part of my identity and who I was, um, and sometimes, you know, you just need to figure out how to make something part of who you are, part of your identity to do it. Like this book, like I never wrote a book before this. I not grammar good. Um, I signed up for an after work, writing class through UC Berkeley Extension. I think it was called something like, finishing the novel. It's one semester in the evenings, which false advertisement because I did not finish a novel in once a week classes at night. Um, but I was like, I've doodled, I've played with stories. I'm going to go sit. I'm going to start writing something, and you know, luckily the professor in that class at the end said, "Hey, you're all taking classes. We're not. No one's a professional writer here. We're taking an extension class. That's it." And she said, "Hey, you're surrounded by other people that want to write. Go form a writers group." So 6 of us formed a writers group. Suddenly, we're meeting every other week, and we're trading chapters and reading stuff. And after a couple of years of doing this, I have a first draft of a book. Well, shoot, now I have a first draft of a book. Okay, I don't know that makes me an author yet, but I have a first draft of a book. That's something. And suddenly, go on a journey to eventually, getting a literary agent. I'm like, oh, well, now I have a literary agent and a first draft of a book, and I don't know where that's headed, but it's going to lead to something. And then, I'm doing drawings for this, and then I'm turning this into a graphic novel, and then someone purchases it, and they're like, okay, now I'm drawing a graphic novel. And now flash forward all these years later, and I have a book that comes out, and I can go, I guess I'm an author. Like it's a book, it's down the store, like the street at the store, like that's it. And all of us, when we think about what we want to be, or we have these aspirations about a certain part of our life or want to be in a certain thing, I think sometimes we think, well, that's not me, right? Because it's not me right now. And what and I'm as guilty as this as anybody, like it's hard to kind of find a way to project forward and go, but that can be me. But I just need to know that road there is not a straight line, uh, and kind of let go of the markers of time, the gates of time that you feel like you have to hit. And I have
I should have
this
been there already.
yeah, I have this saying that you can often have what you want, or you can have something when you want it, but you can rarely have what you want when you want it. So if you let go of that, like I have to do this by this moment, and I was so guilty of this for so much of my life, and you just go, I'm just going to keep working on something that I want to create or craft or be or whatever, you have a better chance of getting there.
How did you come to this story? And maybe if you want to share a little bit about what the story is, but why was this the story that you chose as a debut novel?
Say that one more time, because you broke up for one hot second.
Huh. All right, we'll get that
So
cut.
on my
Um,
end, you broke up. So
yeah,
we'll
yeah, yeah.
repeat that one.
Why this book? Why was this the story as your debut novel that you wanted to tell?
Yeah, I had, like a lot of people that write or tell stories, like I'd messed around with a few different ideas, and um, I remember actually thinking like, well, if I only have one chance to do this, what story do I want to tell? And I it started with like this kind of what if idea, like what if I was daydreaming, I was driving to work one day, and it's like, what if an animal just jumped out in front of me? And what if that animal was a foggy day? What if that animal like jumped up in the air and flew away? It's like, what if that animal was a reindeer? And then I was like, what would a reindeer be doing here? And that's kind of the what if that sparked this. And then, it kind of like these different parts of me kind of like folded into this idea. And I love this, this is a holiday story. And I love, holiday movies and stories. And it just felt like, there were enough pieces of me that I can fold into this. That like I'm like this is the story I want to tell, and how I equate it is you kind of like craft something out of a pantry of experiences. It's not verbatim, right? This is not a documentary. Its protagonist is an 11-year-old girl in 1955 in Colorado. I was neither alive in 1955 nor have I ever been an 11-year-old girl, nor have I found a flying reindeer. So spoiler alert. But there's all these pieces of me and life that you kind of fold in as an author into the storytelling, right? To craft something that hopefully feels unique and new and fresh and can kind of live on its own.
There's so many questions. When you're talking about storytelling in this several frames, right, that is the act of Steve Jobs on stage pulling an iPod, I think it was Nano, from his coin pocket. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's a fairly that's very concise acting, right? Putting together
Yeah.
a multiple 100-page graphic novel is a very different form of storytelling. So I think the place I want to start is like, what's similar between those?
I mean, I think the scale of Steve Jobs telling a short story and revealing something over the course of 2 minutes on stage, very different than a 350-page book. Um, uh, but it's still about introducing an idea, building drama, having something move in a direction, trying to pull your reader or your audience in, and then building on top of that, right? I mean, I'm sure if you were to go back to that Apple event, that whole event actually has an arc to it. It's got, he doesn't start the event with that, he ends the event with that, right? That's the climax. Most of our books don't end with the climax. And here's how it ends. Now go read the next 300 pages. That doesn't happen. You build and you shape a story just the way that you build and shape an event. You've put on plenty of events. You build those events. Anytime we watch TV, there's events. Things do have a shape to them. So writing this book, like anything else, has got that shape of your introduction and your characters and building these characters and getting to know them and hopefully care about them, and then building up towards things and making a turn and having you not know where you're going and think you know where you're going, and something is a surprise, and introducing elements, right? Like the Steve Jobs story, he introduces the coin pocket and then he pays it off. In this book, I introduce things and then I pay them off. I just might pay them off, 100 pages in between or something like that versus 30 seconds in between. So it's still a variation on storytelling, just like you might play 30 seconds of a song, or you might play an hour concert. You're still playing music and you're still using the same kind of fundamentals in that.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would guess that as an animator of 30 years, you're more comfortable, you're more familiar with telling visual stories, right? Which is fun for me because I'm more comfortable with written stories. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
a wall of books in front of me. That's been my craft of the last several years, and beyond that, I've never tried to tell stories in visual form. And so what advice would you give me if, right, I'm like, oh, reading this, and I mean this with the highest praise, like I don't read a lot of graphic novels. The thing that this most put me in mind of was the Bone Compendium, which is a graphic
Mm-hmm.
novel, right, which I love dearly and revisit. Uh, but I think of, if I were to try and write fiction, I would try and write something closer to Heinlein, to The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, or Time Enough for Love, or Stranger in a Strange Land. But now I'm like, oh, but okay, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be my mother's artwork that she slaves away for multiple years on a single piece of art, right? It can be comics I saw in the newspaper growing up compiled into a compelling story. What
Yeah.
advice, as somebody who practices, sketching like we did as kids on napkins with a pen or pencil, like where would you suggest I begin if I were to fantasize about, or even begin practicing towards sketching a graphic novel, sketching a visual story?
So I think it's a great question, and I think it's something a lot of people maybe don't think about because they don't think it's possible. And I did not for my wife and I, who will be married 25 years this January, and on our first date, post college date, we went out to dinner, and I had a list of things, and I'd said at that point like, oh, I think I might want to write a book. Yeah, it took me 25 years to write a book. But part of that is like, I never even thought about doing a graphic novel because I didn't draw like what I saw growing up. I didn't draw like what looked like Spider-Man or the X-Men or whatever. And it took years of me, and I'm a professional artist, and I still have imposter syndrome for being a professional artist sometimes, to be comfortable enough going like, it's not about having to draw something that looks like A, B, or C that you see out there. It's about it's about creating art uh, in a style that's your own, because as an artist, like we said, it's your opinion that you're putting out there, and in a way that simply has to practically express what you're trying to express, right? Um, if you can express it in stick figures and that serves the story, that works. It does not have to be like airbrushed paintings or something like that, which also works. It really depends. Now, in terms of actually practically telling a story, if you're used to just writing novels or whatnot, this book started out as a written novel, as in just regular novel, that I was going to just do some spot illustrations in. So I wrote the whole thing. I actually sent it out to publishers with my literary agent with just a few illustrations saying, and then we just want to do some spot illustrations. And everyone said no, except for one publisher said, I love this illustrations. Would you consider doing it as a graphic novel? And I was like, all right, because it's one thing to say, I can't do this because I don't draw like X, Y, or Z. But it's another thing if someone's asking you to see something. If like someone's like, you want to come over? I'm like, yes, I want to come over. I'm going to show up. And so I'm like, I'm just going to draw this like my style, like how I want to draw this. Now, how I did that is I took all of the dialogue that I had written for the characters, and then I simply drew all the description. That's essentially what I did. And if you think about most books, now I had written the book without any, I'd written it in like a close third person, but without any like inner thoughts, and then I was thinking this. So it was all kind of external dialogue and description and everything. And so I'm like, okay, well, there's all my dialogue. And I'm just going to draw the description and let's see what it looks like. And that was my first pass. And it wasn't too far off. I'm like, oh, I guess this works. So, there's ways to do it. You don't have to start drawing a book from scratch. You can just write it and then you can kind of translate it. Um,
I, as somebody who's reinvented my career a lot of times, recognize this, but I think it's worth speaking to because if I'm experiencing it, I can assume other people are as well, which is, wow, that sounds like so much work, right? Like you've written a book and then got rejected a whole bunch. And so instead of giving up and saying I'm bad, right? I mean, it's actually almost the literal definition of courage, right? Is getting back up and trying again. But it sounds like, oh, okay, we're going to do spot illustrations. Oh no, I'm going to reinvent this book as a drawn description. And yet I would suspect that a lot of people who hear you, see you, and say 30-year animator at Pixar, oh, easy for you, right? But then wait, you got rejected by everyone but one who just liked your illustrations and said, okay, start over and turn this into a graphic novel. What is that?
And they rejected me then, and a different publisher bought it. So just so you know.
Perfect. Perfect. Capstone, the cherry on top. How do you, and maybe this comes back to treating your art poorly and developing that relationship with your practice. I want to get into how do you practice, but why did you come back? How do you come back? Right? Or for somebody who's meeting you just now for the first time, maybe through North for the Winter, like what is your relationship with practice? How do you take no 50 times and then reinvent the book as a graphic novel only to get rejected again to get
Yeah,
started?
yeah. No, I totally hear you. I mean, I think part of it is like I'm lucky that I happen to be what myself and other people probably call an optimistic person. Um, I also have a fairly vivid imagination, so I'm an optimist with a vivid imagination, which I'm like, yeah, we'll figure this out. Um, but then, I have, you know, I'm I'm middle aged, man, and I kind of love it because you get to a point where you've been through enough stuff that um, you can kind of figure it out. Like when you start, I have this lovely description I also use. When you start out in almost anything in a career or whatever, and we can all think about this, like we're over here, and you're like in this arc, you're like, I can do anything because I cannot die, right? And then you kind of go and you start doing stuff, and you're willing to do anything. Like, let's go do that. Let's go start a company. What if we go broke? Doesn't matter. I don't have any money. What are we going to do? Let's go jump off the cliff. What's down there? Oh no, I'm going to knit myself a parachute. You don't know how to knit. We'll figure it out. Like you'll do anything. You just jump and you're learning, you're growing, whatever. And then you kind of start moving through this arc and you're like, oh, life has weight and consequences. And now I have relationships and responsibility and all this stuff. And you get to this middle point and like you've had some success and you had some failures and you know what's ups and what's down. And you're like, oh my gosh, and I don't know if I should do anything. And you start to get a little frozen, right? In this middle spot where the weight of everything, because there's so much awareness, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Then there's this tipping point where you're like, hey, I'm still here. And I figured it out. And I don't know what's next, but I didn't know what was next. And I figured it out. And then you're like, I can do anything. So I can recover from anything. Right? So there's these kind of two edges, these ends of the spectrum. And, like I have two kids. They're both in college now. The second's going off this fall, so we're empty nesters. But I remember they applied to several schools. They got into wonderful school. I applied to one college. I applied to one school. Put all my eggs in that basket, and it was an art school, which my single mother let me do. And it was Cal Arts, and I barely get into college. I barely got into college. If someone wants to search on YouTube, they can hear me talking about it at a conference like a dozen years ago or something. Um, but the practice of what I had to go through just to even get into college taught me how to start, just kind of figuring it out and how to kind of like navigate through that. And I've had several of those moments throughout my life and career of just, like, well, that didn't work. Okay, maybe this. Well, that didn't work. Maybe this. Well, maybe, oh, well, I'm going backwards. Oh, here we go. Here we go forwards. And I kind of, one of the analogies I use is like a Roomba that keeps bouncing off stuff. You're like, oh, that's a problem. I'll just go around it. And it kind of keeps moving. And you're like, I don't know that equating myself to a robot vacuum is the best thing, but it eventually gets the whole job done. So, it just kind of goes around the couch. So there's a weird answer for you.
Let's go back to storytelling and specifically to make it tactical for folks listening. Like, what are, we've all heard, okay, the hero with a thousand faces, right? Like the, Dan Harmon's 8-part story cycle. What are the frameworks when you're making a movie at Pixar that you keep coming back to?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if you look at this book, this book is very classically structured. You have your opening and your inciting incident within the first less than 10% of the book. If you go to open the book halfway through and you're about at your midpoint, we're going to reveal pretty much all the information you're going to need. We're going to get your low point about past 2/3 of 3/4 of it. We're gonna double down on that. We're gonna feel like there's nowhere to go. They're gonna have to come together. They're gonna have to solve it together with the people that they rejected. Get to the end, think you have a solution, and then have a hard turn, and you got to figure out a different solution that we planted on you 100 page earlier. So like, there's a lot of like very kind of honestly classical story structure in this book. And what's interesting is a lot of early readers said, "Oh, this feels like a movie," and I want to be like, "Yeah, that's what I know how to make." So I kind of just wrote a movie as a book. Um, and there's a lot of different ways to tell stories, and a lot of different structures. This is not the only way, but I did take, what a lot of people would look at as kind of a classic movie structure, and I kept referencing back to it as I was making this book. And it was kind of like this zoom out. Like, I can't tell you how many times I would write a whole pass and then I'd pull back and like just hit markers and be like, what happened in these chapters? Are those chapters progressing towards these tent poles? Are the smaller chapters within there, are they progressing? Do I end this chapter here and end it here? And so I've got to switch and a change. Does that hook up with the next one? And I've got that beat. Am I ending it with a feeling of like a resolution, or with a question? Do I want you to turn the page or not? Like, how many scenes did you in a film that you get to the end of the scene and you go, oh, what? They cut? What's going to happen? Right? Because we want you to keep watching the movie. I want to get to the book and end with a question more often, like, what's going to happen? So you can flip the page. So it's a lot of the same practical tools that I'm using, just in book form. And one of the things that I've told a lot of like friends and coworkers about this is how valuable writing this book was to what I do during the day here at Pixar, because both of them are exercising different parts of kind of the same like creative systems. And it helped me, I feel like it helps me do my job better here. And this place, helps me write better books. So, they definitely have a symbiotic relationship, which is great.
I was going to ask, and I think you've answered it before I could, which is how much direct attention to structure did you put in? And did that come at first or after writing? And it sounds like you wrote and then referenced these tent poles of structure and then rewrote around them again and again and again.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's in writing there's the planners and the pantsers. The planners, like, they I didn't make this up. The planners like plan everything out and then they write through it, and the pantsers are like, I'm gonna make it up as I go along. On this book, it was a little bit of both, right? I kind of knew where it was going, and I laid out kind of these large tent poles. And then this was advice from, God bless UC Berkeley Extension, my night class. But the teacher was just like, write a chapter. Do not go rewrite that chapter until you finish the book. Write the next chapter and then the next chapter. Do not go rewrite anything until you finish the book and then the next chapter. And that bit of advice of like, I kind of know where I'm going, right? I kind of know where I'm going, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm just going to now like get through this whole thing, and I'm kind of aimed in the right direction. And then at the end of it, I can go, oh, how far off am I? Or what did I come up with that surprised me? And what did I, come up and I hit what I needed, and how can I make those adjustments? And it's a lot of that back and forth.
I just moved to a new house, and so I don't have my full office set up right now, but I have a water flask given to me by Seth Godin that says no such thing as writer's block, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've been writing the Snafu newsletter for the last 2 years, and have been writing that, publishing 1,000 words every week for 2 years now. The phrase that came to me pretty early on, maybe 3 months in, was writer's block is trying to edit while in the process of creation.
Mhm.
And creating and editing are both essential to any creative practice, to any practice of any kind. But trying to edit while in the midst of developing means you get stuck, right? You can't do both simultaneously. They're contradictory practices in some ways. And so what your writing teacher at UC Berkeley Extension was saying was, right, get through the creation
Yeah.
before applying your editor's mind to the stuff you've already created.
Yeah. Yeah. I had I did I before I got into animation, actually the first thing I ever got paid to do artistically was I had a comic strip in the Sacramento Bee when I was in high school in the teen section. I went and I showed up and I said, I want to do a comic strip for your teen section. I showed up with 6 weeks of comic strips because I'd read an article about Charles Schulz doing comic strips ahead of time. Because this was before the internet, people, and I had to read articles about this stuff. And so I showed up and I did this comic strip for 2 years. But in reading about, Charles Schulz and Peanuts and Charlie Brown and everything, he had some quote somewhere in his like, decades long career where he said the difference between an amateur and professional is professionals hit their deadlines. And I kind of loved it because it kind of means like, uh, well, you don't have writer's block because you have a deadline, so do it. And I'm sure if you're doing this newsletter, like, guess what, kid? That newsletter's coming out, and um, and it is a thing where, sometimes when I'm writing or drawing or doing anything, I just need to start, right? You just need to start. And it does not matter if it's good or bad. It just needs to start. And then you'll get the momentum and then you can make it better and then you can keep going. But it's just that's the trick. And like I tell folks, you know, for the most part, the reason this book took so long is I was doing it for about an hour a day. That's what I had time for. Our kids were 10 and 8. I had family and a marriage and a work and everything else. And uh, the time when I would work was usually between like 5:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the morning or 7. That's my time. Um, because, I learned early, no one makes plans with you at that time of day. No one. Not your family, not your friends, not your spouse. So you can do whatever you want. And so I was like, wait a second. So I can do whatever I want in the morning, which means I can work on this book. I can do anything. The hardest thing in the world is the step from the mattress to the floor in the morning to get up at that hour. And the conversation I often have, more often than I should admit, is my alarm goes off and I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. And then the little voice goes, fine, don't get out of bed, but do not complain if you didn't get anything done today. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so annoying. And then it's like, and remember, you're going to be super happy an hour from now when you've actually started working on something. I was like, oh, I hate you. And then you get out of bed and you start and you just kind of, stumble out to the kitchen. I prep all my coffee the night before. I fill the kettle the night before. So all I have to do is stumble out to the kitchen and turn on the kettle. That's it. And then I can stumble back to the bathroom and brush my teeth. And then I can stumble back to the kitchen. I've got a little more stumble on me and pour some coffee. And by the time I've sat down and poured some coffee, I'm like ready to go. I'm like, here we go. Just start. Start writing, start drawing, start doing whatever. Got a timeline, go.
I was going to ask, and this seems to be the pattern. First you answered my question, then I asked the question, but I'll ask it anyway. Right? What is your relationship with what Stephen Pressfield calls resistance? Or if you want, what is other than just get started, just start, right? Like what is resistance, or if you want a different term, we can say writer's block, right? Why do more people not create? Why do more people not practice?
Oh, I mean, I think a lot of us don't create a practice because we're human and we get tired and we get distracted and it takes a lot of it's like mini marshmallow tests all the time, where, you know, like I said, after you've done something, you're like, oh, okay, that felt good. I'm glad I did that. But sometimes the 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 friction points, the barriers of resistance to start can seem so overwhelming in the moment that you're like, you can't see through that fog to the promise of completion, and you're like, I don't know if it's really there today. I bet you that promise of completion didn't show up. So I'm not gonna start. And and it's just hard, right? And I think it's practice, it's momentum, and it's sometimes it's having someone who's there to be your advocate. Sometimes it's having someone there to be accountable to. Um, I will say when you're making something big, a book is big, a movie is big, things like this, you're going to have to draw from a well that is so internal and true to yourself that it won't ever go dry. And like I couldn't count on this book that took me so long, and there's so many pages and so much work. I couldn't count on someone else to always be there to be like, you should do this, keep going, keep going, keep going. Now, granted, there's a lot of people around me who love me and support me that said, hey, keep going. But the daily little bits of like, get out of bed, do this stuff, you got to do this, are you going to do this? It's that type of, it takes a, like, it's a mental exercise to build the kind of mental resilience to keep pushing forward and trying to make anything. But like I said, on that kind of arc, when you start to do something, you realize what you can actually do. I mean, we've seen people do this with, getting in shape. We've seen people this with getting over, hard things in life, any number of things. Um, but it's legit. Like it can be difficult. I don't think that can be downplayed. Um, so start small. Just start small, and do. I didn't start by saying I was going to go draw a 350-page graphic novel to be published by a major publisher and show up in every bookstore around the country. I started by taking a UC Berkeley extension class, one night a week. I had to write a chapter that I had to read every 4 weeks. That's pretty small. I could do that. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Is something I heard an old baseball coach say, and that helped me, through that. I couldn't dream about all the way there yet. I had to start here. Like, I just need to do this in the mornings. I just need to get out of bed, and then I just need to turn my kettle on.
Any tactic, let's say for entrepreneurs or authors or aspiring authors listening, people building stuff, people creating stuff, about storytelling, about moving people to emotion that you've remembered or learned that's been reinforced for you in writing and publishing North for the Winter?
100%. Here's the thing. I would highly suggest do not try to move people to emotion. Try to move yourself to emotion, right? If you try to move someone else, you're trying to, tap into someone else's experience. You're trying to think what would they like or not like, what will make them excited or sad or whatever. Make yourself excited or sad or whatever, right? Write, draw, create, tell a story that is as authentic to your own voice as it can be. For several reasons. One, that's art. That's you creating art and putting it out in the world. You're putting your emotion, your opinion out there. But two, if you think about it, the stuff we relate to the most are the things that artists or storytellers or people around us seem to be the most authentic about, right? They seem to be something that they're really trying to tell from the inside out. They're not trying to tell you something to make you happy. They're trying to craft something because this is how they see the world. And I am guilty of both. I am not gonna lie. Like I'm a normal person who's tried to do things to make people happy or laugh or sad or whatever. But the process, and this is where like the process of, having to draw from that well and being on a long journey and everything is when you're making something of this size or this length of time, you kind of have to do it for yourself. You kind of have to do things that will make you happy or chuckle or laugh or emotional or whatever, um, in the hopes that someone else will see it like that. And it's kind of a trip. I'm not going to lie. Having not done this to this degree with something so personal before, where I'm reading some early reviews and people are saying what they felt, and I was like, oh my gosh, they got it. Like they got it. Like I didn't think they get it. I mean, I felt that way and I like this and this is what I was doing, but I didn't think someone else would. And that's the key though, right? It's you're trying to do something that makes, if it can make you smile, it probably is going to make someone else smile. It doesn't have to be everybody, but someone else will see it like you saw it, and that's art, right? Like if it is a painting that your parents took you to in the museum, that painter was trying to say, "This is how I saw the world," and if you looked at that painting and said, "Oh, I see that, I see that," that's great. That's the lens, man. That's the lens.
I think that's as good a place to end as any. Bobby Podesta, where can folks go to learn more about you, and where should they go to find and read North for the Winter, your debut novel?
They can learn lots about me. I have a handy dandy website. It is just my name, so it's bobbypodesta.com. So that's easy, and they can get the book anywhere books are sold. You can also literally go to my website, click on a button, it'll take you someplace where you can go to anywhere books are sold. But pick your favorite place to buy a book. If it's online, just do a search. If it's your local bookstore, go in. They'll probably have it. If they don't have it, say, "Would you order this?" And they can get it to you in like 2 days. So it's great.
Awesome. Bobby, congratulations. Thanks for sitting down. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic.